Bullet's YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Jimmy Cables would start at pole position for the 13th race of 2013, where Andrew Axler says that Phil Tankson is going to win the race, and Craig Shiftwright disagrees. He thinks Brad Keselowski's going to win. One of his other racers, Terry Carcass, would wreck Jack DePost and himself on lap 29, and on lap 30, Chip Gearings would be out because of an engine failure. And then Rex Revler would wreck Matthew Overdrive on lap 33, but then Jamarcus Cakehart would wreck Rex Revler on lap 39. But on lap 70, Doug Throttleman would be out because he jumped into the catch fence. And Dirksen D'Agostino would be out on lap 121 because of an engine failure. But then Brad Keselowski would wreck Sebastian Silva on lap 139. And then Sebastian Silva says this. Well, he is right. And Casey Corner would be out on lap 141 because of an engine failure. Jimmy Cables would lead the most laps, leading for 143 laps, including pole. But Lightning McQueen would be in the lead on the final lap. But Jimmy Cables would still win the 13th race of 2013, with Lightning McQueen finishing second this race and only losing by 8 feet. Greg Beeple finished third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished fourth, and Tony Gassert would round out the top 5. Reb Meeker would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 34th this race. Carl Edwards would start at pole position for the 14th race of 2013, where Speedy Comet would be out on lap 22 because he hit the wall too hard. And then Casey Corner would be out on lap 42 because he crashed into the infield. And David Rudikar would be out the very next lap because of another crash. Kyle Busch-Tire would wreck too many cars on lap 128. And then Sebastian Silva says this. Yes, wrecking other cars is wrong. And then he would wreck Kyle Busch-Tire on lap 138. But then, the mean yellow and red car, Joey Logano, would wreck Greg Beeple on lap 141. And then Phil Tankson would wreck Joey Logano 2 laps later. But then, Phil Tankson and Denny Carlin would wreck each other out on lap 148. Reb Meeker would accidentally wreck Ryan Newcar, who had airborne Kurt Busch-Tire and himself on lap 282. And then, Kurt Busch-Tire, don't say that word! Todd Marcus would be out on lap 285 because of engine failure, and Jeff Burnton would be out on lap 307 because of a failed jump. Matt Karzith would wreck Tony Gassert on lap 377. And then, surprisingly, Brick Hicks would lead the most laps, leading for 143 laps. And Brick Yardley would win the 14th race of 2013, with Jamarcus Cakehart finishing second this race, Carl Edwards third, Michael Cartrip fourth, and Lightning McQueen rounding out the top 5. Juan Pablo Montoya would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 26th this race. Carl Edwards would get 2 consecutive poles, starting up front for the 15th race of 2013. And then Bobby Carboni would be out on lap 5 because of engine failure. And then Ernie Gearson would retire from the race on lap 36 because he got too tired. And then Kyle Busch-Tire would wreck Bobby Swift on lap 50. The mean yellow and red car, Joey Logano, would wreck 2 other cars on lap 52. And then Casey Corner would be out on lap 103 because of a crash. And the mean green car, Hicks, says this. That is very mean. And due to this, he will be banned from attending for 10 races. And an anonymous Piston Cup fan had this to say. He is right. And James Garrison would fail to wreck Joey Logano on lap 193. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be out on lap 283 because of a crash. And Brad Keselowski would wreck Jack DePost once again, but this time on lap 393. Doug Throttleman would jump over Kurt Busch-Tire on lap 395. How? And Kurt Busch-Tire would fail to wreck Doug Throttleman later that lap. And then he would be out as a result of failing to wreck Doug Throttleman. And then, Kurt Busch-Tire, don't say that word! Jimmy Cables would lead the most laps, leading for 92 laps. But then, on lap 398, he would go down a lap. And then, on the very last lap, Jimmy Cables would get back onto the lead lap. But who wins the race? Greg Beeple would be the winner of the 15th race of 2013, with Kevin Carvick finishing second this race, Martin Carrix Jr. finishing third, Kyle Busch-Tyer fourth, and Tony Gasworth rounding out the top 5 once again. Jimmy Cables would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 34th this race. The mean yellow and red car, Joey Logierno, would start up front for the 16th race of 2013, where Chip Gearings would start second this race. And here is what his crew chief had to say. I like the positivity. And then Chip Gearings would be out on the very first lap. And here is what his crew chief had to say. Why, Joey Logierno, you mean yellow and red car? Joey, you didn't have to wreck him. And then Doug Throttleman and Rex Revler would accidentally wreck each other on lap 73. And then Dino Draftski would wreck Sebastian Silva on lap 85. And then Jamarcus K-Kart would wreck Dino Draftski on lap 151. Some laps later, on lap 162, Kyle Busch-Tyer would wreck Joel McQueen. And then James Garrison would wreck Joey Logierno, the mean yellow and red car, on lap 175. Reb Meeker would be out on lap 295 because of an engine failure. And then Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be out on lap 324 because of an engine failure. Phil Tankson would fail to wreck Kyle Busch-Tyer on lap 325. And then Buck Beeringley would be out because of a crash the very next lap. Brad Keselowski would wreck Denny Carlin on lap 347. And then Kyle Busch-Tyer would wreck Juan Pablo Montoya on lap 371. And then James Garrison would fail to wreck Kyle Busch-Tyer with 4 laps to go. Lightning McQueen led the most laps this race, leading for 90 laps, but it would be Matt Kenseth winning the 16th race of 2013 with the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch-Tyer finishing second this race. Kevin Carvick finishing third, Lightning McQueen finishing fourth, and T.G. Castlenut rounding out the top 5. Todd Marcus would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 31st this race. T.G. Castlenut would start at pole position for the 17th race of 2013, where Slate Granger would wreck Pitbull Speed Racer on lap 10. Why? And then Samuel Serpentino would wreck Bogart Hopscotch on lap 12. Of course he did that. And Phil Tankson would wreck Slate Granger on lap 16. And then the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch-Tyer, would wreck Ryan Newcar, who went airborne on lap 19. And then Casey Corner says this. And then Ryan Newcar has a problem with this comment. He is sort of right, though. And Kyle Busch-Tyer would wreck Casey Corner and Brick Hicks on lap 28. Phil Tankson, number 28, would wreck Denny Carlin on lap 37. And then Joey Logierno would wreck Phil Tankson on lap 45. James Garrison would wreck the mean yellow and red car on lap 52. And then Brad Keselowski would wreck James Garrison on lap 55. 5 laps later, Brad Keselowski would be wrecked out by Jamarcus K-Kart. And then Kyle Busch-Tyer would wreck Jamarcus K-Kart on lap 72. And Craig Shiftwright says this to Andrew Axler. And then he's wondering where Rex Revler went. Well, this anonymous Piston Cup fan told Craig Shiftwright that Rex Revler actually failed to qualify for this race. And Tony Gasworth would wreck out both Kyle Busch-Tyer and Jamie McCarry on lap 194, and Chip Gearings would be out on lap 201 because of an engine failure. 3 laps later, Ernie Gearson would retire from the race because he got too tired. And then, on lap 217, Doug Throttleman would be out because he jumped into the catch fence by accident. Jeff Burnton would accidentally wreck Maury Clutchburn and himself on lap 238. Reb Meeker would be out on lap 249 because of an engine failure. And then Matt Kenseth would wreck out Tony Gasworth on lap 282. But then, on lap 341, Billy Carjoy would have an engine failure. Why? And then, Ricky Speedhouse Jr. would be out on lap 346 because he hit the wall too hard. Cal Weathers would lead the most laps this race, leading for 84 laps, but it would be Matt Kenseth winning the 17th race of 2013, with Jimmy Cables finishing second this race, Lightning McQueen finished third, Cal Weathers fourth, and T.G. Castlenut once again rounding out the top 5. Who would be the last car to finish on the lead lap? It's Samuel Serpentino, who finishes 21st this race. Kyle Busch-Tyer would start at pole position for the 18th race of 2013, and Paul Racedraft and Speedy Comet would accidentally wreck each other before the race, and this would result in Floyd Mulvihill and Sebastian Silva qualifying for the race instead. But then Floyd Mulvihill would wreck Sebastian Silva on lap 23, and then Sebastian Silva says this. Yeah, why did he have to do that? And then Michael McDrivewell would be out on lap 33 because of an engine failure. And then Joey Logano would wreck Martin Truex Jr. on lap 97. Why? And then Phil Tankson would wreck the mean yellow and red car on lap 105. And then the other mean yellow car would wreck too many cars on lap 127. And then Denny Carlin would be pushed by James Garrison on lap 149. This crash is bad enough that Denny Carlin is now out next race. And then Kyle Busch-Tire would wreck too many cars once again on lap 254. Brad Keselowski would wreck Jamarcus Cakehart on lap 57. Why? And then Piston Cup fans would begin booing Brad Keselowski as a result. Chip Gearings would be out on lap 269 because of an engine failure. Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 104 laps. And he would be in the lead on the final lap. But then Floyd Mulvihill would use the wall to pass Lightning McQueen and win the 18th race of 2013. And Craig Shiftright, who's actually his boss, says this about his win. And Bob Cutlass says this about Floyd Mulvihill's win. Lightning McQueen finished second this race and only lose by 6 feet. And here is the photo finish. Kevin Harvick would finish third this race, Cal Weathers would finish fourth, and Clint Bowcar would round out the top 5. Carl Edwards would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 29th this race. The Rocket Ryan Newcar would start at pole position for the 19th race of 2013, and then Kyle Busch-Tire would wreck too many cars on lap 148. And then on lap 356, Lane Locke and Reb Meeker would accidentally wreck each other out. Doug Throttleman would be out because of an engine failure on lap 358. And then Phil Tankson would fail to wreck the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch-Tire, on lap 383. Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 96 laps, but it would be the Rocket Ryan Newcar who would be the winner of the 19th race of 2013, with Lightning McQueen finishing second this race, Cal Weathers finishing third, Casey Corner fourth, and Tony Gasswort once again rounding out the top 5. Tommy Highbanks would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 36th this race. Lightning McQueen would start at pole position for the 20th race of 2013, but James Garrison failed to qualify for this race, and it would be Rex Revler who would be qualifying instead, causing Rex Revler to say this. Joey Logano would wreck Jamarcus Cakehart on lap 20. Why? And then Phil Tankson would wreck the two mean yellow cars on lap 77. Hooray! And then Chip Gearings would be out on lap 274 because of an engine failure. Rex Revler would be out 5 laps later for the same reason. Lightning McQueen would lead the most laps this race, leading for 183 laps, including pole, and then he would go on to win the 20th race of 2013. And then Bob Cutlass says this, as this is Lightning McQueen's 80th career victory. And then Phil Tankson finished second this race, Bobby Swift third, Cal Weathers fourth, and Reb Meeker surprisingly rounding out the top 5, and Ralph Carlo would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 38th this race. Andrew Axler says this about Phil Tankson finishing second, and Craig Shiftright said that Andrew Axler just got lucky. And then Cal Weathers would start at pole position for the 21st race of 2013, where Joey Logano would wreck way too many cars on lap 117. And then Denny Carlin would fail to wreck Tony Gasswort on laps 168. And then, as a result, Denny Carlin would be out next race as a result of the crash. And then, Joey Logano would wreck Tony Gasswort on lap 182. And now, Tony Gasswort would be out for the season. And Tony Gasswort says this about Joey Logano. The mean yellow and red car's teammate, Brad Keselowski, would once again wreck Jack DePost on lap 217. And then Phil Tankson would wreck the mean yellow and red car on lap 223. Murray Clutchburn would be out on lap 346 because of an engine failure. And Cal Weathers would lead the most laps this race, leading for 182 laps, including pole. But Lightning McQueen would be the winner of the 21st race of 2013, with Cal Weathers finishing second this race and only losing by 10 feet. And here is the photo finish of the race. And Kyle Busch-Tyler finished third, Jimmy Cables would finish fourth, and Brad Keselowski would round out the top five. Michael McDrivewell would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 24th this race. T.G. Castlenut would start at pole position for the 22nd race of 2013, and Mark Carton will have this look for the rest of the season. Ralph Carlo would be out on lap 2 because of an engine failure, and Joe Brakecheck would be out 58 laps later for the same reason. Juan Papa Montoya would be out on lap 78 because of a crash. And Rex Revler would wreck Darren Ledfoot on lap 119. By the way, Darren Ledfoot led 65 laps before being wrecked out. Todd Lagasse would be out on lap 134 because of an engine failure, and Doug Throttleman would accidentally wreck Jimmy Cables and himself on lap 183. And then Casey Corner would be out because of a crash on lap 206. The very next lap, Terry Carcass would fail to wreck James Garrison, but 2 laps later, he would be out himself because of an engine failure. And then, his teammate Joey Logierno would wreck too many cars on lap 287. Why? And then Phil Tankson would wreck Brad Keselowski on lap 304. And then the mean yellow car, Kyle Busch-Tyler, would wreck 3 other cars on lap 397. Darren Ledfoot, despite wrecking out on lap 119, still led the most laps this race, leading 65 laps this race. I'm surprised that no other car was able to lead more laps, despite having more time on the track. But who won the race? Lightning McQueen won the race, winning the 22nd race of 2013. And here is Bob Cutlass's commentary. Lightning McQueen has won 82 races? More than Craig Shiftwright? Wow. And Jamie McCarry would finish second this race, Big Cal Weathers third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. fourth, and Brick Yardley rounding out the top 5. Carl Clutchton would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 25th this race. Jimmy Cables would start at pole position for the 23rd race of 2013, where James Garrison would wreck the mean yellow car on lap 3. And then the other mean yellow car would fail to wreck James Garrison and Phil Tankson on lap 63. And Craig Shiftwright says this, that the race is boring. And Andrew Axler says this. And then Craig Shiftwright replies with this. And then James Garrison clarifies what his race team is all about. And then on lap 306, Ernie Garrison would be out because he got too tired. Wait, that's it? Cal Weathers would lead the most laps this race, leading for 64 laps, and then Jimmy Cables would be the winner of the 23rd race of 2013. With Todd Marcus surprisingly finishing second this race, Dale Earnhardt Jr. third, Joey Logierno fourth, and Brick Hicks rounding out the top 5. Chip Gearings finished the race and was the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 41st this race. Kurt Busch-Tyler would start at pole position for the 24th race of 2013, where Joe Brakecheck would be out because of engine failure on lap 1. David Hicks' car, who somehow qualified, would be out on lap 39 because of an engine failure. And then Michael McDrivewell would be out on lap 175 because of an engine failure. And then Kyle Busch-Tyler would wreck T.G. Castlenut on lap 223. And then Carl Edwards would be out on lap 287 because he hit the wall too hard. And then Doug Throttleman and Chad Motorgas would accidentally wreck each other on lap 394. And then Kyle Busch-Tyler would wreck other cars on lap 396. And then Matt Karzith would lead the most laps this race, leading for 109 laps. And he would go on to win the 24th race of 2013, where Cal Weathers would finish second this race, Casey Corner finished third, Brick Yardley fourth, and Sebastian Silva rounding out the top 5. Kevin Harvick would be the last car to finish on the lead lap, finishing 34th this race. And here's the top 20 in points. Lightning McQueen in first, no surprise. But despite Matt Karzith getting the win in the 24th race, Cal Weathers is still ahead of him in points. Not by much though. Clint Bokar, despite not getting too many top 5s, is 4th in points. Probably because he got a lot of top 10s. And Carl Edwards is right behind him, with TG Castlenut dropping to 6th in points due to wrecking out. Bobby Swift is not far behind him in 7th. Jimmy Cables is 8th in points, just ahead of Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 9th. Rounding off the top 10 is Brick Yardley, who is at least 50 points ahead of Casey Corner in 11th. And then right behind him is Kyle Bushtire, the mean yellow car, who is not far ahead of Kevin Karvik in 13th and Brad Keselowski in 14th. In 15th is bad Brad Keselowski's teammate, Joey Logano, the mean yellow and red car. And Greg People is 16th in points, not far behind. Martin Carx Jr. is 17th in points after 24 races, with Ryan Newcar the Rocket not far behind him. Phil Tankson is 19th in points, and rounding off the top 20 is Kurt Bushtire, who is less than 100 points ahead of quite a lot of racers.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Now, you're able to see that the 2013 Piston Cup season is at least reasonably competitive. And why has there been so much commentary after Lightning McQueen's wins? Well, Lightning McQueen is surpassing quite a lot of Piston Cup's greatest ever racers in terms of races won. And keep in mind, Lightning McQueen has won 5 Piston Cups by this point. But not far behind him is Cal Weathers, Matt Karzith, 2 Piston Cup racers who've won Piston Cups of their own, and TG Castlenut, who's having a surprisingly good season. Now, what do you think will happen in the final 12 races of the 2013 Piston Cup season? The 2013 Piston Cup races, 25 to 35. Video will be coming out soon enough. Unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on. After over 2 years since the war started, the Ukrainian people just wanted to live in peace and have freedom, but this common dream was denied to them by the tyrant and bully Vladimir Putin, who gave orders to Russian soldiers to cross the border over 2 years ago. This has forced millions of people to leave their home as it was no longer safe for them to live. And also Ukraine doesn't have enough soldiers to fight against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Why did Vladimir Putin have to give his soldiers orders to invade Ukraine? Did he forget that Russia is the largest country in the world? And also, Vladimir Putin's tyranny currently occupies 1/5 of Ukraine's territory, including Crimea, the Donbass, and many parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts. We here at the #KABullets YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their fight against Vladimir Putin's tyranny. Slava Ukrainie! Heroyam slava! Nechai Shvitsya Daruretsia! Ukrainie Peremoha! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes! May Ukraine be granted victory very soon!